Now, there's nothing different to do in the final period of the year, but if you employ directors and you've put them on the pro-rata basis method, there will be an automatic recalculation of their national insurance in this last period. And I'll explain why that occurs a little bit later in the demo. So in this demo, I do actually have one director, and you can check the director status if you open the employee record and click on the employment tab. And you can see that this director has been set up on the pro-rata basis, and that used to be known as the table method. And this means that their national insurance throughout the year has been calculated in the same way as a non-director, in this case using the monthly thresholds, but it will be recalculated on the annual basis on the last pay date of the year. Now, the other status you can use for directors is the annual basis. And with that method, there isn't a recalculation because the NI is calculated on that cumulative basis throughout the year. So it's only the pro-rata basis directors that will get a recalculation, and you'll see a message that pops up as we run through the pay run. So what I'll now do is I'll just set my process date, and you can see I've already set it to my employee's pay date. And then I'm going to go into the enter payment step. I'm going to skip the check for legislation updates. And because I have employees that have either left or are marked on hold, I'm just going to click yes to this message to deselect them. So it's brought up the payments for that first employee, and this was my director. And you'll see when I save the payments for the director, we get the confirmation message that they've been recalculated on a year-to-date basis. And this national insurance figure is actually different to what they would usually pay on their salary, and I'll explain why in a few moments. To explain the difference with directors, the way that their national insurance is calculated is based on their cumulative earnings and the annual directors' NI thresholds. And depending on the status you've set them up on, that either happens throughout the year if they're on the annual basis, or if, like me, you've put them on the pro-rata basis, that's when you get your recalculation, and that's why that message popped up. Now, I'm sure you're aware there have been a number of national insurance changes throughout the current tax year. So back in July, the primary threshold was increased. And then in November, the rates for national insurance were decreased when the health and social care levy was cancelled. And because of these changes happening throughout the year, the way that the director's NI calculation is done is based on annualized thresholds and rates. So this is kind of the average thresholds and rates based on the changes that have occurred throughout the year. Now, you don't need to worry about these numbers because the calculation will be done automatically based on the most up-to-date legislation. But the primary threshold for directors for this tax year is £11,908. The employees' percentage for their main contribution above the primary threshold is 12.73%, and the employer contribution on earnings above the secondary threshold is 14.53. And those are the values that come out over the full year when you annualize the different changes that have occurred. So you can read more about how directors' national insurance works by following the link on the slide. But I wanted to quickly show you the effect that it had on the director we saw in the demo when the recalculation was done. So we have here a report, the payment summary history report for that particular director. And you can see each month they are earning the same salary, £2,500. But there was 1 month during the year where their pay increased because they received a bonus. And in month 9, they actually earned £10,000. Now, at the time when the national insurance was calculated, it would have used the monthly thresholds, and some of that pay would have fallen above the upper earnings limit. So when the employee national insurance was calculated, some of that would have been paid at 2% at the time. Now, come the end of the year, the annual earnings in this case are £37,500, and that is less than the annual upper earnings limit. And that's the reason why there's been a recalculation. And actually in month 12, where they were just paid their usual salary, they actually paid a lot more national insurance than they usually do, looking at previous months. And that's because they're effectively paying the national insurance that was due on that bonus payment they received back in December. So over the course of the year, they'd have paid the same national insurance if they were on annual basis, as they have done on pro-rata basis. But with pro-rata basis, it allows your employees to spread the cost of the national insurance, and it is suited more to directors that receive around the same pay each period. Because as you've seen, if there's been variances in the pay, there can be a bit of a surprise at the end of the year when it comes to the recalculation. Employer NI has also been recalculated, but it's not so noticeable as the employer rate doesn't reduce above the upper earnings limit. And as I say, this is the same national insurance that would have been paid if they'd been on the annual basis all year. They've just paid it at slightly different times.